Hi, my name is Sky. I was one of those girls who seemed to have everything. I lived in a rich neighborhood, went to an elite school, had a closet full of branded clothes, and did gymnastics 3 times a week. Sounds perfect, right? But in reality, my life wasn't as smooth as it appeared on social media. Subscribe to the channel and I'll tell you my story. To be honest, the only thing that really annoyed me was the fact that my parents were in their late 40s. They were nice and caring, but geez, they had no idea what it was like to be a teenager. For example, Dad once decided to surprise me with a pair of fashionable sneakers, except he bought me work boots with soles as thick as bricks. It's in now. Thanks, Dad. Now I'm ready for both a photo shoot and work at a construction site. Last year, my parents threw a surprise birthday party for me and hired an actor in a polar bear costume. I'm not kidding. You loved them when you were a kid. Exactly. When I was a kid. A few days after that, Mom arranged a photo shoot in a park for me. Yeah, a perfect background. Ducks, flower beds, and signs saying, "Do not walk on grass." Thank you, Mom. Now all my followers will think I'm an old lady at heart. But the worst thing was that my parents had planned out literally my entire life. One day, they were like, "Sky, you're going to graduate from this elite school, then go to university, then work for a big company, meet a good boy, get married, and have children." Like I was a program and they'd already written my script for the next 30 years. Sometimes I suspected that my parents had even prepared the guest list for my future wedding. It was terribly frustrating. But one day, my life was turned upside down. I was walking home after a gymnastics practice when it started to rain. I hid under a bridge. The next second, a guy jumped over the railing and landed next to me. He was wearing a black jacket. His hair was wet and he was holding a skateboard. "You're in my hiding place." I didn't even know what to say. He had such a magical smile and piercing gaze. It felt like he could see right through me. His name was Robert. We chatted for a while and I tried to impress him.
"Sorry, but I like bad girls. Being a goody two-shoes is boring."
At that moment, I had no idea that his words would stick in my head like an earworm. Robert didn't try to sound smart and often made off-topic jokes. It seemed like he didn't care about school or the future. However, there was something about him that had me hooked. Robert was free. No rules, no shoulds or musts. I decided to try being a little bad. The next day, I skipped class. I just wanted to feel like I was in control of my own life for once. I came to the skate park near that bridge. When Robert saw me, he raised an eyebrow.
"Oh, the rich girl has escaped from her golden cage?"
He introduced me to his friends. None of them cared about school, and some of them had even stopped going to classes altogether. They skated, climbed on shopping mall rooftops to take selfies, and sneaked into abandoned construction sites at night to race each other upstairs. And guess what? I started to hang out with them. One day, we climbed into an empty swimming pool and filmed reels there. We also ran on a bridge railing, with the river rushing below. I was drawn deeper into their world by the day. We would stay out late, skate in empty parking lots, and laugh at silly stuff. Robert started to invite me along more and more often. I was skipping practice with increasing frequency. Even when I was at school physically, my mind was still in our hidden kingdom. Robert and I became an item. Even though he sometimes seemed a bit too simple for me, I couldn't bring myself to stay away from him. However, I had to come up with a lot of excuses so that my parents wouldn't suspect a thing. Why I was late, why my phone was dead, why my sneakers were dirty. I also stopped spending time with my friends from school. It happened so fast, I didn't even realize it at first. All I knew was that I wanted to be with Robert and his gang all the time, because that's where I felt free. Gymnastics? Forget it. I had parkour now. I was agile and my skills made me stand out. I could climb into places the rest of Robert's friends didn't even try to reach, and make jumps that made everyone's jaws drop. For the first time ever, I felt admired. Robert was looking at me with new eyes too. We grew closer, and I realized he wasn't as simple as he seemed. We were talking while sitting on a shopping mall roof.
"You know, everything we do, it's not serious."
What do you mean?
"Well, I don't want to spend my whole life running around rooftops. I want to become a real athlete, maybe a coach."
Wow, and here I thought he was just a delinquent. Then I saw him chase away a bunch of students who were bullying a stray dog.
"Touch it and I'll make you regret it."
Those kids scattered. Robert picked up the dog and said he would find a home for it. At that moment, I fell even deeper in love with him. A couple of days later, he brought me to the rooftop of an old house where he kept his drawings and notebooks of poems. I flipped through the pages, and Robert looked at blushing. He hoped to publish his poetry collection one day, and that was really unlike the guy I'd met under the bridge. Why are you hanging out with those guys if you have plans like this?
"Because I wanted to look cool, same as you. We're young. We're supposed to do crazy things."
My happiness didn't last long. One day, my parents went out and, yep, you guessed it, saw me with my new friends. We were about to climb over a fence and go to the old swimming pool again. That was it. The end of the world. At home, I got the scolding of a lifetime. My mom kept screaming about dangerous people and broken lives, and Dad was saying something about choosing sports over jumping over trash cans. They forbade me from hanging out with my gang, practicing parkour, or even going out without permission. The control got twice as strict. And you know what I did? That's right, I decided to rebel. Not because I wanted to be bad, but because I didn't want to be the perfect doll my parents saw me as. And also, I didn't want to lose Robert. I was sure my parents wouldn't approve of him. A couple weeks later, my mom dragged me along to their friend's house. They had a son, Eric. He was definitely a good boy. Neat hair, a white shirt, polite demeanor. It was like he stepped out of a toothpaste commercial. Sky, after you come of age, you and Eric should consider getting married. I almost dropped my cup. When we got home, I tried to explain to my parents that it was ridiculous, but they refused to listen. They took away my credit card and only gave me a bus fare. They even threatened to cancel our summer trip to Miami. Dang it! I had to pretend I gave up. By the way, Eric turned out to be okay. He was kind, funny, and genuinely tried to find a common language with me. He wasn't annoying, but still, he wasn't Robert. The problem was Eric got really clingy really fast. He kept texting, calling me, asking me out. It was obvious he'd fallen for me. I couldn't reject him because my parents would have found out, and then I would have been done for. I had to get creative. One day, I mentioned to him that I had heard about a rare vintage car brand that could only be found on the other side of the city. Eric, who was a fan of old cars, got excited and took me there. However, as soon as he started to take photos and argue with the salespeople, I quietly sneaked away to see Robert. Once, I sent him to a very important baking workshop. I told him I couldn't go myself because I had a family meeting. In reality, I was too busy hanging out with my friends on rooftops. That whole time, Robert didn't know anything about Eric because I loved him, and I didn't want him to think I was cheating on him. Robert took me skateboarding at night. We raced down the empty streets with wind whistling in our ears, and then sat on a roof, eating pizza out of a box and looking at the stars. Robert even introduced me to his parents. It turned out his family wasn't poor, but his parents didn't pay any attention to him at all. I realized that he wasn't rebelling for the sake of being cool. He just wanted someone to notice him. Soon, everything started to fall apart. One day, Robert and I were sitting in a small cafe. I stepped away for a minute to order more lemonade and left my phone on the table. At that moment, Eric texted me. Of course he sent me a bunch of heart emojis. Robert saw them. When I came back, he stood up without even looking at me and left. Has something like that happened to you too? Tell me in the comments down below. I called after Robert and ran after him, but he stayed silent. I had to tell him the truth about my parents and Eric. He listened to me, thought for a minute, and then said,
I've got an idea. Let's get Eric to join our gang. After a while, he'll give up and go away.
I didn't think it was a good idea, but I also didn't think things could get any worse. I invited Eric to hang out with us. He agreed, of course. My friends immediately started to test him. First, they made him climb over a fence of a guarded warehouse and steal a sign. Then, they sent him to an abandoned construction site full of rats at night. They also made fun of him and called him a coward when he refused to jump off a dilapidated staircase. Eric endured because he was in love with me. However, the longer it went on, the angrier Robert got. He was clearly jealous. I was torn. I loved Robert, but I had to act like Eric's cute girlfriend so that my parents would not find out anything. Things quickly went from bad to worse. We were all at the skate park when Robert and I shared a look and burst out laughing at some old inside joke only we understood. Eric saw that. Later, when we were alone, he said,
Robert is hitting on you.
You're imagining things.
I could always anonymously report him to the police as a vandal.
Are you crazy? Don't! He shrugged, but I could tell that Eric was getting suspicious. When it rains, it pours. My parents also started getting phone calls from the school and found out my grades were slipping. The gymnastics club called them as well. They wanted to kick me out for skipping practice. My parents scolded me again. I thought all my lies were about to be exposed, but then Eric said,
I'm sorry, it's my fault. I've been asking her out and we often spend time in the library or doing volunteer work. Sky was just tired.
He was lying, but my parents believed him. They said I should spend more time studying and doing sports, and that was it. I thanked Eric, but he immediately set conditions.
You must spend more time with me.
Oh, dang it. I had to agree. That meant I couldn't see my friends and Robert as often. Naturally, my boyfriend wasn't happy about it. Because of that, Robert did something stupid. In a fit of jealousy, he climbed onto a mall roof with his friends and tried to hang a huge banner with my picture on it. Of course, the security guards saw them. While escaping, Robert fell and hurt his leg. Everyone else was taken to the police, but he was rushed to the hospital. When I found out, I immediately ran to him. Robert had a cast on his leg and looked pale, but he smiled when he saw me.
I love you, Sky. I did it all so that you would look at me and not Eric.
I held his hand, and I couldn't stop crying. Then Eric walked in. Of course, he realized that I loved Robert and not him. He turned as red as a lobster and left without a word. I didn't even chase after him. I didn't care. Robert was the one I loved. I promised that I would always be with him. When I got home, I didn't tell my parents anything. I just went to my room and looked at my group chat. I wanted to know what happened to my friends. It turned out that some of them got community service, and some had even been expelled from school. But you know what was the worst thing? They were all shifting the blame.
We didn't do anything. It was all Robert. He talked us into it.
Everyone blamed him to get out of trouble. That's when I realized that such friendships weren't worth a dime. I was lucky I hadn't been at the mall with them. I would have been in so much trouble. My parents would have had strokes. It was the first time I realized that my parents had been right. They must have wanted to protect me. The next day, I decided to apologize to them. I came out of my room and saw Eric complaining about me to my parents.
Sky was hanging out with those guys and lying to you this whole time. A guy even got hurt because of her. She made me lie to you too. I'm not going to marry a girl like that.
He left. I was standing in the middle of the room in a daze. My parents were shocked. Oh, my heart! Mom clutched at her chest and Dad called an ambulance. She was taken away and I sat in the living room, blaming myself for everything that had happened. I apologized to my dad and then he told me why he and Mom had been so worried about me.
Your mother had another pregnancy before you were born. Unfortunately, there were complications during the delivery and we lost the baby.
The doctor said we wouldn't be able to have children after that. We kept trying for years. And then one doctor suggested an experiment, a new technology. We agreed and you were born, perfectly healthy. But we were terrified that we would lose you.
As I listened, a lump rose in my throat. My whole life, I hated how controlling my parents were. But that's just how much they loved me. I promised I would find a way to make things right. The next day, Dad and I visited Mom in the hospital. And guess what? It turned out her ward was right opposite of Robert's. I sat next to my mom and told her everything about Robert, my new friends, Eric. When I finished, I apologized to her. We crossed a line too. I'm sorry we were so controlling. To be honest, we never really liked Eric. Would you like to meet the person I actually do love? We went to Robert's ward. He almost fell out of bed when he saw us. He was being so polite, like he met royalty. My parents took an instant liking to him. The next day, I went to school and gymnastics practice and tried to catch up. I had missed a lot. Every day, Dad and I visited Mom. One day, we walked into her ward and saw her and Robert filming some silly hospital TikToks and laughing like children. It was so cute, I almost burst into tears. After some time, Mom was discharged and came back home. Robert was soon discharged as well. He had to use a cane, but I was always by his side. He often visited us, and my parents approved of my choice. I've decided that after high school, I'm going to go to medical school, become a surgeon, and help Robert so he can run and jump again. Here's the moral of the story. Our parents might seem strict and annoying, but they're usually just trying to protect us. And the coolest thing you can do is be yourself instead of pretending for someone else's approval.